I should have known better than to expect anything different. The moment I pulled that t-shirt out of the gift bag, I already knew it was a setup. Bright yellow cotton, black bold letters stretched across the chest, most likely to fail. Yeah, that was mine. I didn't flinch, just smiled like it was no big deal. Like, it didn't feel like someone pressed rewind on every humiliation I'd swallowed for the last 20 years and played it in HD. I folded it neatly, set it on my lap, and took a sip of iced tea I didn't even want. My cousin Donnie cackled first. "Come on, Toby, it's just a gag. Lighten up," Uncle Greg chimed in, still chewing on a rib. "You've got to admit, it's clever." My mom? She did that thing where she scrunches her nose and laughs like someone just told a risque joke in church. My dad just shook his head and smiled like I was a toddler who tripped over his own feet. I gave them all a nod, just one, then another, slower. Right. Hilarious. No one noticed my hands were shaking under the table, or maybe they did and didn't care. Both options suck, but here's the twist: I paid for all of it. The venue, the catering, the decorations, even the matching shirts. They used my money to slap that insult across my chest. I'd booked this lakeside cabin thinking stupidly that maybe nostalgia could fix something broken. That being near the pine trees and that rickety dock they used to love might soften things. Instead, I got proof. Not a hint, not a suspicion. Cold, screen-printed confirmation that nothing had changed. And the wildest part, I wasn't even mad, just tired. Like soul tired. Like dragging a cement block tired. You ever get so tired, your body doesn't even have energy to be angry? I pushed my chair back and said, "Be right back." No one looked up. I went upstairs to the guest room, technically my room, since I rented the whole damn property, and opened my suitcase. There it was. That navy blue folder. Heavy-duty paper, thick and smooth. Expensive enough that you could feel the money in the texture. It was supposed to hold something important, something beautiful. Instead, I walked back into that room full of laughing relatives and slowly, silently began tearing it apart. Page by page, re-eb. At first no one noticed. Then I heard Danny's voice, sharp with curiosity. "Wait, what's that?" My brother, Kyle, leaned forward, squinting. "Is that a legal doc? Dude, what are you doing?" I didn't answer, just kept tearing. It was almost meditative. My dad stood halfway up. "Toby, what the hell is that?" I placed the torn pile right in front of my empty plate, smiled this time without even trying to fake it. "Enjoy the shirts." And I walked out. No yelling, no drama, just footsteps against creaky wood and the soft hump of the screen door as I stepped into the night air. I didn't even take my hoodie. Didn't need it. My phone buzzed in my pocket before I made it to the car. Then again. Then 5 more times in a row. I didn't answer. Let them read what I destroyed first. Let them feel it. 10 minutes later, I was still sitting in my parked car, staring at my hands on the wheel. I wasn't shaking anymore, just numb. Their laughter kept echoing in my head, like it was nothing. Like I wasn't supposed to feel anything from being called a failure in front of every blood relative I had. They thought it was harmless, a joke, but it wasn't the first. It never is, right? I could trace it all the way back. Kyle once broke Mom's vase when we were kids. I got grounded because I was older and should have been watching him. I was 9. When I got my first B in high school, Mom nearly cried. Kyle failed math twice and got a pizza party for improving his attitude. At 17, I asked Dad to co-sign a $3,000 student loan. "You need to learn to stand on your own 2 feet, he said. "Kyle?" He got 2 car wrecks and a flight to Cancun paid for with a shrug and a check. So I worked. Nights, weekends. Skipped prom, skipped parties, skipped life. Taught myself how to build websites, how to code, how to sell an idea when nobody wants to listen. Built my company from a dusty laptop in a busted apartment in the city. But I didn't tell them. Why would I? If I succeeded, they'd claim it. If I failed, they'd gloat. So I stayed quiet. But I watched my cousin Danny post her inspirational entrepreneur quotes from a laptop I knew she couldn't afford without someone's help. Watched Kyle start 4 different businesses, none of which survived a full tax season while our parents bailed him out with silent loans and even louder pride. And I helped anyway, quietly. Anonymous donations, backdoor payments, because I wanted to believe they were still my family. Last year, I offered to fly everyone to Aspen for a Christmas retreat. Mom told me not to waste my money, then bragged online about how Kyle surprised everyone with a family getaway. That was the moment something inside me snapped. So this reunion? That was supposed to be it. The grand reveal. In that Navy folder were notarized letters. I'd paid off my parents' mortgage, set up a trust fund for my nieces, hired an accountant to create debt relief plans for everyone sitting at that table. Every single one. It was all signed, sealed. The table decor even matched the folder color. I planned it that far out. But instead, they gave me a gag t-shirt and a front row seat to my own humiliation. They laughed. And now? Now they were calling, because now they knew. Now they finally read the papers I tore up. And for the first time in my life, they weren't laughing. The drive back to the city was long, but it felt shorter than it should have. Maybe because I didn't play music. No podcasts. Just silence and tires humming against asphalt. My phone lit up the entire ride. Missed calls, voicemails, texts so long they filled the notification screen. I didn't open a single one, not because I wanted to punish them, but because, for once, I needed space, real space to think. When I got back to my apartment, the first thing I did was kick off my shoes and throw the damn shirt into the trash. I didn't even have to look at it again. The words were already etched into my mind. Most likely to fail. They thought they were being funny, safe in their assumptions, wrapped in that self-righteous comfort of, we know who you are. But the thing is, they didn't. They never did. And that folder, that was their one chance to see the real me. The version of me who stayed up until 4 a.m. working on code so I could afford to fix their plumbing when they didn't even ask. The version who covered Downey's hospital bill, anonymously, when her insurance fell short. Who paid off the rest of Kyle's failed loan under a shell company because the collection calls were affecting our parents' credit. Yeah, that version. I didn't do it for thanks. I never expected them to throw me a parade, but I guess I thought, maybe if I showed them who I really was, they'd stop seeing me as the family mistake. Turns out they weren't interested in changing the narrative. They liked the role they'd cast me in, background disappointment. Anything else? Too uncomfortable. The next morning, my phone started buzzing again. I ignored it, let it fill with messages until the red badge became just part of the wallpaper. But then my best friend Leo called. I picked up before I could think about it. Dude, he said, not even a hello. What the hell happened? I sighed. What didn't? I saw the post. That made me sit up. What post? Your cousin or sister or someone, she posted a picture from the reunion. Caption said something like, some people just can't handle being part of a family. Sounded like a subtweet, but not subtle. I closed my eyes. Of course, I should have seen it coming. And the comments? He added. They're tearing you apart. Sympathy posts, vague quotes about toxicity. Some of your relatives straight up calling you unstable. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was just so predictable. They're building the story already. What story? The one where I lost it, had a meltdown, stormed out because I couldn't take a joke. Leo paused. You didn't tell them what was in the folder? Nope, he whistled. Damn, that's stone cold. Wasn't about punishment, I said. It was about control. Still, that's the kind of move people remember. I spent the rest of the day flipping between frustration and this strange calm, like I'd finally dropped a bag I didn't realize I'd been dragging since I was a teenager. They weren't going to see me. Not really. And maybe that was okay, but I wasn't going to let them rewrite me again. Not this time. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I forwarded all the original documents, the scanned versions I'd emailed myself, weeks before the trip to my lawyer. I asked her to log everything. Dates, signatures, even the paper grade. And then I called my assistant. Hey, I said, bump the Forbes interview to this weekend, full release. Include the scanned contracts. You know which ones. There was a pause, then a soft chuckle. You sure? More than I've ever been. 2 days later, the article went live. No fireworks, no announcement. Just a quiet post. A single link. The Silent Investor, how a low-key tech founder funded his entire family, then walked away. Inside, it laid everything out. not in a bitter tone, just facts. Quiet, clean, irrefutable facts. It mentioned my startup valued north of $40 million. It mentioned the scholarships I set up for underprivileged students, the anonymous donations tied back to shell foundations, and finally, the family, the payments, the trusts, the retirement fund I was going to hand over. It even included a photo of the torn papers. Yes, I'd taken a picture before the trip. Call it insurance, call it foresight. The article didn't name names, but it didn't need to. My inbox exploded. Congratulations, sympathy, shock. People the first hadn't spoken to in years messaged me with variations of, "I had no idea, and I'm so sorry they did that to you." Even my high school English teacher emailed me, "You were always sharp. I'm glad the world's seeing it now." But more importantly, the silence from my family broke. Danny was first. A voicemail. "Toby, what the hell? Why would you make that public? You're making us look like monsters." Then Kyle, "You know we were just messing around, right? You made us look like we exploited you." And finally, Mom, "Sweetheart, you misunderstood. The shirt wasn't serious. We were just having fun." Sure, because mocking someone for years becomes acceptable when you say it's a joke. But I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because for the first time ever, they were the ones scrambling, trying to explain, to backpedal, to twist. And the more they talked, the worse they sounded. A podcast picked up the story. Then a YouTube creator with a few million subs did a breakdown video. When your family doesn't know you're rich and you've had enough. The comments, brutal. And oddly healing, people shared their own stories, being scapegoated, being written off, being the black sheep who quietly made it. Turns out, a lot of us know what it's like to smile through a joke that cuts too deep. But here's the twist they didn't see coming. I never wanted revenge. I wanted closure. That folder wasn't a flex. It was a gift. A peace offering wrapped in linen paper. They turned it into an insult. And now the world knew the truth. Not because I shouted it, but because I finally stopped hiding it. And the version of me they refused to see, he just became visible to millions. I thought the noise would die down after a day or two. It didn't. If anything, it grew. That Forbes article didn't just live quietly on a business blog, it traveled fast. It got reposted on Reddit, dissected on TikTok, turned into a 3-part reaction video by some guy in a hoodie sipping wine and saying, "This is what happens when you play with the wrong sibling." I didn't say a word, not online, not in messages, not even to friends, really. I let the silence speak for me, because it wasn't just a moment anymore. It was a mirror, and everyone who saw it knew exactly who the villains were, even without names. But my family, they didn't go quiet. Oh no, they started spinning. It began with a Facebook post from Kyle. Classic white background, black text, inspirational quote style. "Family isn't always easy. We all make mistakes. But forgiveness is how we grow. Love you all, even the ones who forgot how to love back." I didn't respond, but the comments were gold. "Is this about the shirt thing? That was wild. Your brother literally paid off your debt and you clowned him? Sit down." Then Donnie jumped in. She tried subtle too. Posted a childhood photo of us and wrote, "Before things got complicated. Miss the old days." Someone screenshotted the Forbes headline and dropped it in the replies with the caption, "What part of this is complicated? Looks like your brother just got tired of paying for ungrateful people." Every time they tried to salvage the narrative, someone brought receipts. I didn't lift a finger. I didn't have to. My mom, though, hers hurt a little more. She called me twice. I didn't pick up. Then she left a voicemail that started soft and ended sharp. "It's your mother. Please call me." This whole thing is being taken out of context. That shirt wasn't meant to hurt you. Everyone laughed, even you. You smiled, remember? "I think you're overreacting." And that right there, that last sentence, is what gutted me. Because that's what it always was. Overreacting, too sensitive. Couldn't take a joke. I wasn't shocked. But I guess some part of me had hoped, after everything, she'd say something real. Even just, I didn't realize. But no. She wanted to manage the damage, not fix the fracture. I didn't call her back. Not out of spite. But because I'd finally accepted something I should have learned a long time ago. You can't build bridges with people who keep setting fire to the wood. A week passed. Then 2. I kept moving. Launched a beta version of a new platform I'd been working on. Met with some investors. Went hiking alone for the first time in years. And then one afternoon, right as I sat down with coffee and my laptop, I got a message request. From someone I hadn't seen in almost a decade. Elena, my cousin on my dad's side. The one who moved to Colorado when we were teenagers. The one who used to sneak me cookies when my parents thought sugar was the root of all evil. I hesitated, then opened it. Hey, I don't know if you remember me. I saw the article. Just wanted to say, I always saw it. The way they treated you. I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. I should have. That one got to me. I sat there, just rereading her words. Because it wasn't an apology for the sake of damage control. It was real. Clean. Quiet. No defensiveness, no excuses. Just truth, I replied. We talked for hours. About everything. And somewhere in the middle of that conversation, I realized how badly I'd needed someone in the family to just see me. Not pity, not praise, just see. Meanwhile, Kyle was unraveling. He posted a 10-minute video on his Instagram, clearly rehearsed, where he tried to explain the misunderstanding. Except, he opened by saying, I've always supported my brother, and immediately someone in the comments dropped a screenshot of a tweet he made 3 years ago where he joked about me living in his basement and coding garbage. Another person found an old podcast episode where Kyle literally called me the most disappointing part of our gene pool. That one started trending. The damage was done. He took the video down less than a day later. Danny tried to play diplomat. She messaged me directly. It read, Look, I know things got weird, but this is family. Can we just talk? No lawyers, no cameras, no drama. I didn't reply. Instead, I added her name to the Do Not Disturb list. My silence wasn't anger, it was clarity. Because once you see the patterns, you can't unsee them. But here's where it gets ironic. The very thing they feared me becoming successful and not needing them, that's exactly what they built. Every time they laughed at me, every time they called me lazy, weird, dramatic, it pushed me to build something they couldn't touch. And now? Now they were scrambling to explain how the guy they used to mock was the same guy they depended on. Their reputations were cracking. One family friend, Mr. Langston, who used to live next door, sent me an email. I always wondered why your folks acted so cold toward you. I thought maybe it was something I didn't understand. Now I see it was them who didn't understand you. Small message. Big shift. It proved what I'd always suspected people notice. Even when you think no one sees it, they do. And now that truth was shining in places they couldn't dim. At this point, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a part of me enjoying it. Not the pain, but the revelation, the freedom. For so long, I thought I had to earn love through usefulness, that if I gave enough, they'd finally value me. But love, bought through silence, isn't love. It's leverage. And I'm done being leveraged. There's something strange about silence when it's forced. Not chosen, not peaceful, just empty. That's what it felt like a month after the article dropped. No more missed calls. No more desperate messages. The chaos had gone quiet, but not in a good way. Like standing in a room after a fire. Walls still warm, air heavy with smoke, even though the flames are gone. I thought I'd feel relief. But all I felt was pause. Because what came next wasn't peace, it was the aftershock. It started with an email from a paralegal I'd never met. Subject line, request for information regarding estate filing. Michael Navarro. My father's full name. The message was polite, clinical. Said something about revisiting financial records. About a property deed that needed updating. They needed my signature, apparently. That was how I found out. My parents were trying to sell the house. The same one they told everyone I had no right to. The one they insisted wasn't mine to worry about. Turns out, they'd quietly put me down as a co-owner years ago. Probably to help them qualify for something. Maybe a refinance. Maybe a tax break. I don't know. They never told me. Just assumed I'd never look. But now, they needed me. Again. And they couldn't hide it. I didn't answer right away. I forwarded the email to my lawyer. She called that night. You want to block the sale? I hesitated. No, just stall it. Legally? No, politely. Just long enough to let them sweat a little. She paused, then laughed. Got it. We hung up and I sat on my balcony for an hour, watching the city lights blink without rhythm. I thought about how many times I'd tried to prove myself to people who would rather trip me than see me stand tall, and now they couldn't move a single inch without me signing a paper. Funny how the world turns. Then came the podcast. Some lifestyle influencer picked up the story and turned it into an hour-long deep dive. They broke it down like a Netflix documentary, sound effects, music swells, even a narrator voice that made everything sound like it was part of a crime series. But the real kicker? They had guests. People from my past, old teachers, an ex I hadn't spoken to in 5 years, even my freshman year roommate from college, all saying the same thing: he was always the quiet one, but smart, driven, just. Never got the credit he deserved. It was weird hearing people talk about me like that, like I was some folklore character, the misjudged one, the underestimated. Part of me wanted to curl into myself. The other part? It stood taller than ever. Then came the twist I didn't expect. Elena, my cousin, the one who reached out before, sent me a voice message. Hey, I know this is weird, but there's something I think you need to know. I played it twice before it hit. Apparently, years ago, my dad borrowed money from my grandfather's estate using my name as collateral, quietly. No paperwork I ever saw. But Elena, who'd been managing some of the older family documents for tax reasons, found the trail. You didn't co-sign anything, she said, but he filed paperwork like you did. I don't think it was legal. Or if it was sneaky. My blood went cold, because it wasn't just manipulation anymore. It was fraud. I called my lawyer. Again. She got quiet halfway through my explanation, then said, we might need to do a full audit. If they used your identity for this, it's possible they used it for other things too. The words settled in my stomach like rocks, because suddenly, this wasn't just about old wounds or mean jokes or broken trust. It was bigger. They hadn't just disrespected me. They'd used me, financially, legally. And now the foundation they'd built their version of the truth on it had cracks deep enough to bury them. But here's the thing. I didn't want to destroy them. Not really. What I wanted was honesty. But it was clear I'd never get it. So instead, I documented everything. Every transaction. Every timestamp. Every email. Even the ones with fake apologies. I wasn't preparing for revenge. I was protecting myself. From a family that would smile at me in public while quietly cashing checks I never signed. Then, out of nowhere, my mother went public. A Facebook Live. I only knew because Leo texted me with, your mom's doing a live stream, and it's not great. She looked tired, hair pulled back, wearing one of her church cardigans like it was armor. It's been a difficult few weeks, she said, voice trembling. We've been misrepresented. My son is not the villain, but he's also not the victim. That line hit like a punch. She went on about misunderstandings, about family being complicated, about how they loved me through everything. And at the end, her voice cracked. We just want to move on. We hope he does too. The comments section blew up. Some were sympathetic, but most weren't. Lady, your son tried to give you retirement and you gave him a slap in the face. Funny how moving on comes after public exposure. YLL made shirts mocking him. What did you think would happen? I didn't respond. Because there was nothing left to say. They had their stage. They used it to perform. And in doing so, they confirmed exactly who they were. A week later, the estate issue stalled. My lawyer sent a single-line update. They've gone quiet. No follow-up. No sale. Elena messaged again. She'd found more. Turns out I'd been listed as a silent partner in 2 family business ventures, both of which had failed years ago. Both in my name. Both without my knowledge. I can help you clean it all up, she said. If you want. I did. Not just for closure, for protection. Because the people who told the world I was unreliable had quietly built pieces of their lives on paperwork signed in my shadow. And I wasn't going to let them get away with it again. The day I filed the official notices, to remove my name from everything they'd attached me to, I felt lighter. Like I'd finally cut the last string tied to a life that never felt like mine. And as I walked through the city, sunlight on my back, people passing by with coffees and earbuds, and conversations I'd never be part of it struck me. I wasn't alone anymore. I was untangled. I thought I'd hit the final chapter. Thought everything that needed exposing was out in the open. Turns out I was wrong, because the thing about buried things, they always push back to the surface eventually. And when they do, they don't come up quietly. It started with a headline, not on Forbes this time, on a mid-tier real estate blog of all places. A quiet little post titled, "Silent Investors and Unwitting Co-Owners, the Legal Tangle of the Navarro Family Property Sale." At first I didn't think much of it, but then it started getting shared. Not because it was flashy, but because it was simple, clear, backed with documentation. My name, attached to deeds I never signed, paperwork with forged initials. A quote from an anonymous insider, probably Elena, confirming everything. It wasn't just family drama anymore. It was fraud. And the story took off like gasoline meeting a match. 2 days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring. They left a voicemail. When I played it, I nearly dropped my phone. "Hey, this is Maddox Grant. I'm with Eden Partners. We're interested in speaking with you about a potential advisory position." Maddox Grant. As in the Maddox Grant, serial investor, tech whisperer, guy who turned 2 college dropouts into a billion-dollar software firm and then disappeared from public life for 5 years. I called him back the same afternoon. He answered like we'd known each other for years. "Been watching your moves, Toby. Quiet, strategic. You've built something impressive, and you've handled chaos better than most CEOs I've met." I kept waiting for the pitch, for the ask, but he surprised me. "I don't want to buy your company," he said. "I want to fund your next one." I blinked. "What next one? You're a builder. Don't tell me you're stopping here." And just like that, the conversation shifted. We talked for nearly 2 hours. He didn't ask for a pitch deck, just told me, "You've got vision, and more importantly, you've got clarity. Let's talk numbers next week." I hung up and stared at the wall for a long time, because this wasn't just a new chapter, it was a whole new book. But while I was being pulled forward, the past kept trying to pull me back. Kyle sent me a message, long, desperate, rambling. I didn't know about the paperwork. I swear, I thought Dad handled it all legit. I know I was a jerk. I know I joked too much, but I didn't think you'd burn everything down. Please, man. Mom's not sleeping. Dad barely leaves the house. It's falling apart. I stared at that message for a long time, not because I felt guilt, but because it confirmed what I'd always feared. They never saw the damage until it cost them something. Danny posted another photo of the reunion. This time, she blurred my face out like I was a stranger who accidentally photobombed their holiday memory. Caption: "Some chapters close themselves." The irony was loud enough to echo. She didn't close anything. They slammed the door in my face and forgot I was the one who built the damn house. But then, something unexpected happened. Elena asked if I wanted to meet. In person. We hadn't seen each other since we were kids, but something about her message felt grounding. We met at a quiet park, one of those little hidden green patches tucked between 2 neighborhoods. No cameras, no tension. She brought coffee. I brought the stack of documents I'd collected: records, emails, signatures, a file of my life's invisible weight. We sat on a bench under an oak tree and talked for hours. She told me about things I didn't know: how my parents used my name for more than just property, insurance, business filings, even a failed investment club my dad joined under my LLC. And I told her everything too, about the startup, the torn folder, the t-shirt. She didn't say, "I'm sorry." Not right away. She just listened, really listened. And that meant more than anything else could have. Later that night, Elena texted me something I'll never forget. "You were never the black sheep, Toby. You were just the only one growing in a different direction." I sat with that line for a long time, because yeah, that's what it was. Not broken, not lost, just different. And sometimes that's all it takes to get cast as the problem. The media pressure didn't go away. A couple of local reporters camped outside my parents' neighborhood. My mom posted a Facebook update begging for privacy, but not before someone dug up old posts, years of jabs, family jokes, and comments about me never quite figuring life out. They didn't age well, especially next to articles listing me as a tech founder with 2 acquisitions under my belt and a 3rd company in the works. The internet has a long memory, but you know what has a longer one? Property records, paper trails, digital footprints, and the truth. Then one morning, a letter showed up at my apartment, handwritten, no return address. Inside was a single page. From my dad. I didn't do right by you. I was proud, and that pride made me small. You deserved better than the way we laughed. I can't change the past, but I hope one day we can talk again, if not as father and son, then as two men who tried to do right in different ways. I read it 3 times, and the first time in months, I cried, not out of sadness, but because it was the first honest thing I'd received from him in years, and I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't reply, not yet. I folded it neatly and placed it in a drawer I rarely opened, not to forget, but to save. Because closure doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it's a soft knock at a door you're not ready to open. And that's okay. As the fallout kept playing out in the background articles, podcasts, YouTube breakdowns, I kept building. Not for them, not for validation, for me. Because now, for the first time, I could build without needing anyone's approval. And the silence around me, it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. It didn't end with a bang. No dramatic confrontation, no final shout across a dinner table, no forced group therapy or hugs at an airport gate. It ended like most real things do, quiet and real. 2 months passed since the last message. 2 months without anyone trying to explain, justify, or rewrite what happened. I think they finally understood I wasn't coming back. Not to holidays. Not to text threads filled with inside jokes that never included me. Not to a dinner table where I was always seated 1 chair too far. And in that silence, something unexpected happened. I healed. Not all at once. Not in some cinematic way, but piece by piece. Like finding little parts of myself I didn't know were missing. Like breathing without bracing first. Like opening my eyes in the morning and not feeling the weight of having to prove myself to people who were never really watching anyway. I took some time off, traveled for a while, went to places that didn't know my name, had coffee in small towns where nobody cared what I did or didn't build. I hiked in Oregon until my legs burned, spent a week in Lisbon just walking. Got a tattoo in Seoul, nothing flashy, just a symbol on my wrist. A quiet reminder I stayed, not for them, not for applause, for me. Because I survived the kind of family that teaches you love has conditions. That your worth is negotiable. That jokes are just cruelty with a punchline. And still I stayed. One night, while watching the sunset from a rooftop in Mexico City, I got a text from Elena. Just a heads up, Dad had a heart scare. He's okay now. But it shook things up. I stared at the message for a long time. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't feel what I thought I would. No bitterness, no spite, just a kind of quiet distance. The kind you feel when someone from your past starts fading into a name rather than a role. 3 days later, she messaged again. They're rewriting the will. Your name's not on it anymore. Thought you should know. I read it twice, then smiled. It didn't sting, because by the time they decided to cut me out, I'd already left. Back home, I made a decision. I gathered all the documents, the torn ones, the scanned ones, the contracts I'd created that day at the lake house. I put them in a box, taped it shut, and wrote 1 word on top, done. I dropped it off at a secure storage facility, not to bury the past, but to store it properly, like a file that no longer needed to stay opened. One afternoon, I opened my inbox and saw a message from Maddox. Funding's ready. You name the date. I thought about it for a minute, then replied, let's build something quieter this time. Not smaller, just quieter. Because now I wasn't building from a place of hunger, not trying to fill a hole or prove a point. I was building from peace. A few weeks later, I got invited to speak at a conference in Austin. Not a big one, just a tech and community summit, nothing fancy. But they asked me to talk about resilience. I almost said no, but something told me to go. When I walked on stage, I wasn't thinking about the shirt, the family, the fire. I was thinking about the people in the crowd, strangers, all holding stories I'd never know. And I opened with this. Sometimes the people who raised you also taught you to shrink. And surviving that, that's the work. That's the rebuild. That's the real startup story. Someone in the front row wiped their eyes. That moment, it mattered, because this time I wasn't speaking for validation. I was speaking for anyone who's ever been laughed at by the people who should have clapped first. When I got off stage, a woman approached me maybe late 30s, soft eyes, nervous hands. She said, "You're the guy from the article, right? The t-shirt story?" I nodded. She took a deep breath. "I left my family last year because of your story." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and said, "I'm glad you did what was right for you." She smiled. "Yeah, me too." That night, I walked back to my hotel with a strange kind of joy in my chest. Not loud, not giddy, just steady. The kind that comes when you realize you're not just free, you're finally seen. Sometime after, I got one last message from Kyle. Short. "I hope you're doing okay." I didn't reply, not out of pettiness, just peace. Because closure isn't a conversation, it's a decision. And I had already made mine. A year later, I heard my childhood house got sold to a couple from out of state. They gutted it, changed everything. New roof, new floors. Even tore out the old fireplace my dad swore he'd never replace. At first I thought that would bother me, but the truth, it felt right. Because that house was never home. It was a stage, and I'd already walked off. People ask me now, "How did you get over it?" I tell them I didn't. I grew over it. Like wildflowers cracking through sidewalk, like light filling the space where shadows used to live. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything. So, if you're still here, still reading this, maybe you're the quiet one too. The builder, the watcher, the one they underestimated. I hope you know this. You are not a disappointment. You are not too sensitive. You are not overreacting. You're just tired of shrinking. So stop. Stand up. Walk away if you need to. Build something that feels like peace. Because sometimes healing doesn't sound like forgiveness. Sometimes it sounds like footsteps on a new floor, and no one's voice but your own. Story 2. According to my sister, she only has 6 months remaining. I threw myself into her. My time, my money, even my future. I then located the other phone. I didn't go up against her, I just called. My mother questioned why the news vehicle appeared outside our house the next day. Our warrior queen was written in gold letters on the cake. There was a fondant version of Ashley, on top of 3 levels of glitter, wearing a tiara while seated in a medical bed. Well, delicate. As if it were a wedding cake, my cousin took a picture of it. People were muttering things like, "I don't know how she stays so strong, but she's such an inspiration." Ashley, whose silky curls and beautiful pink complexion made her look utterly gorgeous, was blinking back tears as if someone had just informed her. Her remaining hours were limited, rather than months. I was wondering whether anyone else remembered while I stood by the refrigerator. 6 months ago, she informed us that she only had 6 months left. However, everyone was too preoccupied with being motivated. Julia then took hold of Ashley's hand and mentioned angels. Ash is no longer able to take sweets, so my mom brought out a platter of sugar-free brownies. I found her eating a Kit Kat in bed last night, which is strange. Ashley winked when she noticed me observing. I gave a stiff smile in return. Shortly later, she approached with a mug that seemed to weigh 50 pounds. "I'm so happy you arrived." As if I were an old acquaintance, she said softly. She wasn't expecting to appear. I reminded her that I reside here. Still, she touched my arm and murmured, "It has great significance." She was nice, though. She was always good. Her 10-minute speech about a dying kitty earned her an acting prize in middle school. The judge was among those who wept. Of course, the kitten was a fake, but so was her limp on that particular day. She enjoyed committing to the part. At the time, I recall finding it quite remarkable. Not very much, actually. As everyone waited for her to speak, Ashley slipped back to the middle of the room. There was a speech, of course. You can't have your final year's goodbye party without saying a few words. Ashley was determined to take advantage of the opportunity. She positioned herself next to the fireplace, where the lighting was ideal and gentle, cleared her throat, and then began to express gratitude for her family, her strength, and her ability to find joy despite suffering. Some individuals started crying. I glanced at my mother. Like a pleased stage manager, she was nodding along. Ashley then turned to face my sister and me. Her voice wavered as she spoke. "The ideal quantity. I appreciate all that you have sacrificed for me. I understand that you dislike attention, but without you, I couldn't have made it through this." Everyone looked in my direction. I nodded and grinned. They didn't know, so I felt like I may throw up. They would, but not yet. The room erupted in cheers as soon as she was done. "We love you, Ashley," someone said. Additionally, the entire situation resembled a scenario from a television film. I took my phone out of my pocket as soon as I entered the hallway. I had it queued up already. I'd mentally practiced this moment more than I'd want to acknowledge. I passed it to my cousin Ryan, who is one of the few family members who truly understands how Bluetooth operates. "Is it possible to play this for everyone?" Silently, I said. He blinked. "What is it?" Simply press the play button. The music ceased after a second. Confused, the audience looked about. Ashley walked over to the speaker. "Hold on. What is?" The video then began. Not ostentatious, not theatrical. Enough to silence the room. Everyone became motionless. Ashley's stance changed a little. Her grin stopped. From my position in the corridor, I didn't need to see the screen, but I couldn't. Ashley caught my attention. She opened her mouth, then shut it. She looked around the room, as if she was trying to find the exit or the remote control. A fork was dropped. A strange silence fell. I've never felt anything so thick. Not only weren't people breathing, but they weren't reacting yet. Ashley retreated a step, then another. My mother turned to face her bewildered sweetheart. Ashley looked over at me. The entire color of her face had changed. Lost. The smile disappeared as if a mask had fallen off. "What did you do?" she muttered. I didn't respond. She approached me. "Just what did you play?" So I remained silent. She raised her voice. "It's not real. I assume you are aware of that. It's not real. You have an obsession." She caught the attention of several people. My father scowled. My aunt muttered something under her breath. Ashley's hands were shaking now. "You edited it." She said, "That's illegal. That's defamation. I didn't touch it." I said calmly. "Don't lie to me," she snapped. "You've always hated me. You're jealous. You've always been jealous." "You might want to stop talking," I said. That's when she lunged right for the phone in Ryan's hand. He stepped back instinctively. "Whoa, Ash." "What?" "Turn it off," she shouted. "Turn it off." But it was too late, because people were already staring, whispering. One woman gasped. My uncle looked like he'd swallowed a wasp. And the best part? The video was only halfway done. I watched her freeze. Watched the panic spread from her face to her fingers. Her whole body stiff, like she could already feel it slipping away. The sympathy, the adoration, the lie. She didn't know where to look. Everyone was watching now except me. I was already headed for the door, and as I reached for the handle, I heard her voice again. Soft, desperate. "Please," she muttered. "Don't do this." But I didn't answer as I already had. I used to think the worst part was watching her suffer. Now I know it was watching myself disappear while she got standing ovations. Ashley didn't get sick all at once. It started slow, almost elegant. A weird stomach bug that wouldn't go away. Then joint pain, then fainting spells. All vague enough to seem real, but not specific enough to test for. At first, I didn't question any of it. Why would I? He was my sister. I loved her. He started missing school, then work. She texted me things like, "Just collapsed at the pharmacy. Don't worry. Some angel helped me into an Uber." There was always drama, always a dash of flair. But again, she was always like that. Theatrics were kind of her thing. By the time she said the words terminal diagnosis, my parents were already in full panic mode. They sat me down like they were announcing a death. Ashley cried. My mom cried. My dad kept repeating, "Not fair, not her." I didn't cry. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because it didn't feel real, like I was watching it happen to someone else. So I dropped everything. Because what kind of person doesn't? I deferred my scholarship when I'd worked years for writing a program that accepted 8 people worldwide. 8. I was one of them. I'd already imagined everything: the new city, the weird professors, the crappy studio apartment with a leaking sink. Who's gonna be mine? But Ashley needed me, or so I thought. So I packed up my things and moved back into the house. I told myself it was temporary. Just a few months. One last season with my sister before it was too late. The first few weeks were normal. If normal means cooking, cleaning, and setting alarms to remind someone to take pills you've never heard of. But there were cracks. Like how she always seemed fine when the camera was off. How she'd limp for visitors but walk normally when she thought no one was looking. How she always had a story, for why she forgot to bring back paperwork from the doctor's office. First, I ignored it. Then I started writing it down. Not as some grand conspiracy bought, just small things. I had a notes app titled Art. Didn't take meds today. Said she felt better without them. Eat quick meal in automobile. Then told mom she couldn't digest solids. Told GoFundMe donors she's in stage 3. Told dad she's in stage 2. Tiny things, maybe explainable, maybe not. But they piled up, and the more they did, the more invisible I became. Ashley started giving interviews. First a podcast, then a local morning program. She wore headscarves and grinned courageously. "My sister gave up everything to be here," she said once. Isaac listening. Everyone believed I was a saint. No one asked how I was sleeping or if I'd eaten, or how it felt to see someone pretend to die as you were losing bits of your life. One tiny choice at a time. My folks were too busy arranging care gifts and placing ribbons on the mailbox. I recall once asking Mom if I could take a weekend off to see a friend. She glanced at me like I'd said, "I wanted to abandon Ashley in the woods. Can't you tell she's dying?" She muttered. Correct. Naturally. How self-centered of me. And perhaps I would have continued. If it weren't for the phone, I may have believed it through to the very end. All it did was sit on the counter. Another white phone. Not hers, but a newer model. Or so I believed. I instinctively took it up. I reasoned that it may have been left behind. The lock screen, however, was recognizable. Same name, same background. Lee Ashley. I sensed it at that moment. The tightness in your abdomen. When something really, truly makes sense and you wish it hadn't. I just stared when I opened the mail app. It was signed into the account of Dr. Collins. In each update, she cited the doctor, the person who provided medical advice. It was allegedly the one who said, "We're doing everything we can." Whomever sent it. Collins doctor. The email for recovery. Ashley doesn't use aliases. Don't try to conceal it. She had been using a phony account to send herself medical updates, which she then presented to us as though they were from a legitimate physician. I had trembling hands. I went to the folder called Drafts. Rehearsal notes were present. She planned to utilize these phrases in next revisions. Try stage 4 next, according to one draft. When something sounds urgent, people react more. And I did nothing at all. I couldn't believe it, so I didn't do it immediately. Or perhaps I simply didn't want to. I began to pay attention instead. I looked through her phone records. One prepaid number was used for all doctor calls. The voice was familiar to me. She owned it. Her cadence was distinct, a little nasal. When we were little, she would frequently perform voices, theater equipment, a party trick. She took our cousin out of school for a week, when he was 12, by posing as his mother. She persuaded a whole camp at the age of 17. She spent 3 days in Britain. That ability apparently found a new use. I looked further. She had created sites for donations and shared TikToks with hashtags like Hope in the Darkness and Terminal Warrior. She raised thousands of dollars from strangers, and not only for medical care. There were receipts for expensive clothes, skincare products, a tablet, and loungewear. She was making a living by lying. The unpaid nurse was me. Here's the problem, though. I didn't expose her despite seeing and knowing all of that proof. Not quite yet. She would pretend to cough into her sleeve while I sat across from her and urge me to get her more chamomile tea. When she stated that she didn't want to die in agony, I would grin. She would say things like just trying to savor every moment while I watched her close her eyes theatrically for pictures. And I'd want to know whether I'm the only one who noticed this. I was quite exhausted. Perhaps this wasn't cruelty, I thought again. It may have been something else. Something is broken. An appeal for assistance. A distinct form of illness. Then I saw that her laptop had a folder called Just Scripts, not PDFs. She practiced her ill voice lines on voice recordings and audio files. This Thanksgiving may be my last, as the doctor predicts. All I'm afraid about is forgetting what it's like to be normal. Although I don't want to pass away, I believe I'm prepared. She shed a tear or two on cue, was perfect. All of a sudden, I realized that I couldn't rationalize this. This was not a single falsehood that went too far, nor was it stress or trauma. I was done being an extra for this full-time performance. I thus created a duplicate. Everything. Screenshots, audio, and emails. After that, I called. Not to her, not to my folks. To a completely different person. Suddenly, the last act was underway. There was silence in the room. Not merely silent. Quiet. The kind of quiet that only occurs when a crowd transitions from joy to perplexity to mistrust. Less than a minute. Ashley had stopped talking, not even putting on a show. And I was more afraid of that than anything else. As the video on Ryan's phone mirrored to the TV, I watched her from the hallway. It was like a family movie night. Except instead of a slideshow of baby photos or a holiday montage, what we were witnessing was quite different. It began with a straightforward screen capture of the email inbox, the name of Dr. Collins in the corner. She read aloud the updates she had been showing us while crying. The ones we shared on Facebook with the captions, "Please keep Ashley in your thoughts and sent to friends." Then it cut to a close-up of Ashley on the phone, posing as Dr. Collins, saying things like, "She's strong, but her prognosis isn't good. She fights." People began to move around in their chairs. My father straightened his posture. My mother covered her mouth after blinking twice. Ashley's husband stood motionless, clutching the table's edge as if it would vanish. It wasn't this, but I'm not sure what they were anticipating. The audio recordings followed, videos of Ashley rehearsing, practicing, and changing between her normal voice, her sick voice, and her doctor's voice. Clinical, nasal, and occasionally strangely British. She said in one file to try stage 4 next. When something is urgent, people react more effectively. She was laughing in the last clip. She laughed, "My fans are so sweet." A hand-knitted blanket from my hospital bed, which I don't even have, was just sent to me. There was a gasp. Ashley jumped up and down. "Switch it off!" She let out a cry. "It's not real. I'm not like that." With the remote still in his hand, my uncle gazed at her as if he was unsure of her identity. "Ashley." My mom started. "No." She lost her temper. She edited it and edited it. "She's been out to get me for years. She's obsessed with ruining me." All eyes turned to me. I didn't recoil. "Is that accurate?" Dad asked, voice. "Keep quiet." "No," I said plainly. "But if you want, I can show you the files myself. They're time-stamped, and I've already provided copies to the police." The color went from my mother's face. "You phoned the cops," she muttered, like I'd set the house on fire. Ashley lunged toward me. "You're a monster." My cousin stepped in. "Ashley, don't." She shoved him hard. It was only then that my mom finally stated it. Ashley sat down. It was the first time she'd raised her voice at her in, I don't know, maybe ever. Ashley looked shocked, like someone had hit her. The front door opened, and in strode a man clutching a camera. The local journalist I'd contacted 3 weeks ago. The one who'd interviewed Ashley for the Feel Good Cancer feature last year. He went inside, cautiously inspecting the room. Behind him, a second camera, lighting and outside a vehicle emblazoned with the new station logo. My mom turned to me, shocked. "What did you do?" she muttered. I looked at Ashley. I spoke the truth to a reporter. She yelled, "You wrecked my life." I cocked my head. "You mean the life based on false diagnosis and charity scams?" At last, her spouse said something. "Hold on, people gave that money. Was it all a lie?" Ashley's jaw dropped. Nothing was said. He appeared to have been struck. He responded softly, "You mentioned that it was for treatment." Ashley didn't answer. I simply sobbed. However, that wasn't the typical movie weep. Who was crazy, unpleasant, enraged. More panic, less sadness. She continued to shout incomprehensible things. I saw it as genuine. I required it, until she was eventually dragged back by someone. "I'm not the bad guy," she yelled. Yes, she is. Not because of me, but because she is a coward. She forfeited her scholarship. And that's what broke me, somehow. Because she spoke as if it had no meaning. As if I hadn't been gutted. As if it weren't the dream I had given up to take care of her. As she sat in bed telling falsehoods on livestream. My father sat as if his knees had given out. The reporter stood at the room's edge, waiting. He whispered softly, "We don't have to film inside. We want a statement, though." He was waved away by my mother. An hour later, she appeared 10 years older. Ashley raced over to the staircase. She said, "I'm going to phone my lawyer." I'll see you all. You're without a lawyer? I said. You have a spreadsheet of symptoms that you found online and a burner phone. Leaning closer, my aunt whispered something to my mother. Halfway up the steps, Ashley halted, turned around, and gestured toward me. This is something you will regret. I gazed at her. No, I said. I wish I had done it sooner. She slammed the door and vanished upstairs. With the exception of the creak of a person moving ahead, the entire home was silent once more. Who is my mother? She gave me a glance. For the first time in years, they really looked at me. How come you didn't inform us? I tried, I said. No one had wanted to hear it, but I had in little ways. She didn't answer, simply walked into the kitchen and turned away. Slowly, everyone else filtered out. I got a strange half-huddle from my cousin. I'm sorry you had to do that, someone whispered. Then I heard my dad shout my name just before I got to the front door. I pivoted. He seemed worn out, as if he had lost all his breath. He told she would have to reimburse that money. It is a scam. Charges are being made. I gave a nod. She will go to jail, I'm sure of it. I remained silent. He paused. Was this retaliation? I considered that. No, I said. It was a matter of survival. After that, I shut the door behind me and strolled outside into the sunlight. Over the initial 3 days following the video's playback, nobody spoke to me at all. There was not a single message or call, not even a Facebook thumbs down that is passive-aggressive. Nothing but quiet. After the house had essentially become a life criminal document, you would think they would be more chatty. But when you're the parent that helped their golden kid get the money and she was just exposed as a walking medical scam, I suppose it's difficult to know what to say. Mom began to handle the situation. Of course. She attempted to enlighten the contributors over the phone, explaining that Ashley had been under emotional stress and had been misled by poor advice, and that everything had been misunderstood. When your daughter pretends to have a fatal disease on local television, you try the typical PR bullshit. However, it was unsuccessful. 2 days later, the news piece was shown. Video shows Ashley practicing her ill voice, changing accents, and accessing Dr. Collins's email. The reporter conducted a side-by-side analysis. Overnight, her following declined. Refund requests began to come in. Statements were released by charities that had featured her. Some even stated that they were thinking about filing a lawsuit. Now the cops became involved. It turns out that it's more than simply shameful deception when you collect thousands of dollars and use the money for skincare products and concert tickets while feigning death. Ashley disappeared. Literally, she went someplace away from all the negativity to stay with a friend after leaving the house. Negativity, apparently, now includes having to deal with the repercussions of felonies. The following week, her spouse filed for divorce. He apologized and stated he had believed her when he phoned me once. 2. Claimed to have felt as though he had been living with an unknown person. I trusted him. A lot of things can be faked, but not that type of heartache. My parents, meanwhile, were incensed. But not at me, not at Ashley. Mom told me over the phone that you didn't have to tell anyone. We could have taken care of this in private. She could have been imprisoned. I'm still your daughter, and she's still your sister, according to Dad. They didn't have much else to say after that, I said. It seems like protecting Ashley was a necessary part of loving her. Silence was a need for loving me. I didn't weep, though. I didn't shout. I simply sat in my flat, gazed at the TV, and let the nothingness to consume me. This is what I used to dream about. The truth, not the controversy or the cameras. I used to see my family expressing regret, acknowledging their mistakes, and reminding me that I was important. Maybe it hadn't been in vain that I had spent so many nights catching her pretending to faint and spoon, feeding her soup. Rather, my mother left me a message that began, "We're very disappointed in how you handled things." So I took the necessary action. Pretending to be all right had nearly killed me more than her false illness could have, so I went to therapy because I wasn't okay. As it happens, Ashley's actions have a name: Syndrome Munchausen. It's true. It's not common. It's frightful. She wasn't only lying to do harm to others. The display of suffering was her addiction. She required the attention, required to be shown in order to gain sympathy. Me. The closest thing she had to maintain the illusion was me. I was once asked by my therapist, "How come you remained for so long?" When the initial lie was exposed, why didn't you leave? I wanted it to be genuine, so it took me 3 sessions to say it out. Because all the sacrifices meant something if it was real, I said. Then it wasn't a waste to give up my dream. Then there was a reason for the anguish. However, it wasn't. Furthermore, I had to let that go. For just 6 minutes, the story was on the national news. But the consequences was more persistent. Ashley ultimately consented to a plea agreement that included community service, required therapy, and restitution, but no prison time. She erased the contribution sites, cleaned up her social media accounts, and temporarily stopped using the internet. Since then, we haven't talked. My parents did make another attempt to get in touch. In a way. On my birthday, my mother texted me, "I hope you're doing well. You are on our minds." Since I had finally stopped thinking about them, I chose not to respond. The scholarship was accepted by me. I postponed the same one. As it happens, they reserved a place for me. I've resumed my writing. Not Ashley, not about sickness, about dishonest individuals. Yes, but also about those who are able to recover. They are released. I participated in a panel discussion last week on emotional abuse and stating the truth. After that, a young woman approached and said, "Until I heard your story, I had no idea what was happening to me." And I sensed a change within me. Not arrogance, not contentment, something more subdued, calm. Ashley didn't have to go through this. She didn't have to apologize to me. I didn't need my parents to transform into the individuals I had always imagined them to be. All I had to do was stop bleeding for those who never gave me a bandage. I'm no longer furious then. I'm living in someone else's performance, dude. I have finished putting someone else's needs ahead of my own. Dunn is a drama's supporting character. I never consented to participate. Ashley. The story is finished. It's only the beginning. Was it excessive of me to make it public? Or was it the sole means of being heard at last? Tell me in the comments below. Remember to subscribe if you would want to see more tales like this one. Story 3. Upon the publication of my book, I composed something that my brother stated he wanted to read. I grinned. He then took out my personal journal and read it out loud. My sister had to get up because she was laughing so hard. I was requested to sign copies of the journal by my uncle. I went outside and used my phone for something. They were pleading with me to reverse it a month later. I wish I could say that when I first went in, I got a nasty sense that something wasn't right, that the atmosphere was too calm, that my mother was too happy, or that the wine was already open. However, no. It seemed typical, which was worse. The scent of lemon and rosemary filled the house. Candles had been lighted. On the console table at the entrance door was my book. 3 copies at the very least, stacked flawlessly. They must have been placed that way by my sister. Even if it wasn't her own, she always had a knack for presentation. I had been convincing myself this was a wonderful idea all day, that their desire to honor me was admirable, that perhaps it was genuine for once. I entered carrying a bottle of wine and a hopeful stomach. A huge error. "Look who created that." From the kitchen, my mother called. She spoke too softly. As if conducting a culinary show, my sister was already swirling a glass of crimson. He gave the air close to my cheek a kiss. She said, "You look professional," as if that were a compliment. My brother was sitting on the couch, partly looking bored, half viewing something on his phone. He said, "I created a playlist. Everything is from the early 2000s. I mean, back when you were still writing in your notebooks." It sounded like a joke from him. I chuckled a little. The type of chuckle you have when you're unsure of whether you should. They served dinner. There were toasts. My mother said that as a child I was constantly thinking. According to my sister, she never thought I would write a book that would be sold. It was endearing that everyone laughed like way. Tonight was larger than they realized, so I kept a smile on my face the entire time. I had already signed my second book contract, but I hadn't told them yet. Greater advance, greater publisher. It was a tale nearer the bone. And over dessert tonight, I was going to make the announcement. I even prepared a little thank you speech in my mind for immediately following the cake. I had a gift in mind for them. Something substantial. Something they would take pride in. I had persuaded myself that they would be pleased. My brother then grabbed a book from the console table. "Hey," he said, opening it. Would you mind if I read aloud a little bit? I grinned. Naturally, I grinned. He had never before expressed interest in anything I wrote. Yes, I replied. That would be pleasant. It wasn't my book, though. I recognized that the voice was incorrect in 2 sentences. The phrasing was incorrect. Give me a break. To tell the truth, I froze. I never told anyone I had a crush on the kid I used to write about until he struck the line. Someone too close to the family to publicly acknowledge. Already my stomach had fallen to the ground. I had an old diary that he was reading. My sister was the first to figure it out, not in surprise but in expectation. Her hand sprang to her mouth. She smiled and said, "Oh my God." My mom gave a little startled chuckle. Leaning forward, my uncle appeared to be seeing something on stage. My brother continued. He even added some theatrical flair to the sentences, as if he were trying out. And I just stood still, exposed. With exaggerated melancholy, he read, "I believe that if I vanished, no one would notice for at least 3 days." My sister laughed so hard, she almost passed out. My uncle inquired if I would also be signing copies of the journal. I was still standing. I was unable to. My ears were broken by something. My hands were chilly, yet my heart was racing. My journal. It was the only place I had ever been honest. Now it was material for a performance. Silently, I approached and removed it from his grasp. No shouting, no commotion. The lid was pulled aside with just 2 hands tightening around it. He appeared perplexed, as if I didn't understand the joke. I proceeded to the front entrance while holding the journal close to my chest, not saying a thing yet. I went outdoors. I was not followed. I took a seat on the stairs. Up until I unlocked my phone, the cool air felt nice. I refrained from scrolling. I didn't send an SMS. I just took action. Something silent. Something that would completely alter the situation. I could hear laughing erupting from within behind me. The clinking of glasses. My name sounded like a joke. My sister was laughing so hard that she had to grasp the counter when I glanced over the window at them. My dad shook his head in shock, his jaw gaping. My brother was reading off the page while feigning a swoony voice. They were unaware. They were unaware of what I had just done. They'll find out, but they wouldn't be laughing. You would assume the journal was the first step. It didn't. That was only the encore. Actually, even before I knew how to spell the term boundary, I had already become the family joke. It began modestly. Behind my back, a smirk was shared, and a raised eyebrow was resolved. I was the child who asked too many questions and cried too much. I made up stories before I could put them in writing, and talked to myself in the mirror. I wrote in the margins of church bulletins, filled notebooks, and made drawings on arithmetic, assignments, and dialogue. In her own little universe, as usual. With a laugh, my mother used to say. However, there was no laughing in the world I lived in. Not the type that was pleasant anyhow. Came with corrections. Sarcasm, disguised as concern. A brother who once imitated me, reading aloud, until I locked myself in the bathroom and stayed there through dinner. A sister who told people at school that I was kind of weird but sweet. And a father who would look up from the TV long enough to say that again. They never shouted or struck me. It would have been simpler to identify that. Rather, they rendered me invisible, or worse, only made me apparent when I was acting absurdly. I recall telling them once, when I was 13, that I wanted to be a writer and not in a romantic, hazy manner. I had compiled a list. I had a strategy. I had done some study on writers who were published before the age of 20. From behind his newspaper, my father chuckled. He responded, "Let's start with passing science class." It was humorous, so everyone else laughed as well, because I was humorous. Since I was, of course. The creative one claimed that I had a slight advantage over the eccentric person during dinner gatherings. "It's not serious. She's going to write a novel about us one day," my sister would remark, patting my head as if I were a golden retriever. I didn't know what else to do with the heat in my face, so I would laugh along with everyone else. In high school, I made one attempt to quit writing. I disposed of the notebooks and the partially completed tales. I endured for several days. After that, I purchased a fresh diary and wrote until my wrists started to cramp. I wrote words about how afraid I was of growing up and still not being good enough that I had never stated out. Regarding my sister's plaudits for receiving a BS, I received quiet for an A in English class, but no one noticed that my journal was the only place. I told the truth, and my brother once missed my birthday. They have now distributed it as if it were a party game. That dinner humiliation was nothing new. It was simply noisier. They never stopped laughing. Simply put, I had never heard it all at once. It's weird since after college, I didn't even want to return home. For a while, though, I did. I had secured a freelancing position as an article writer. Just tech articles and thought pieces. Nothing spectacular. Whatever would be profitable. It's transitory, I reassured them, that I was solving problems. My mother informed others that I was in between jobs. She writes about, feeling or whatever, my dad said, after introducing me to our neighbor, who happens to be our little writer. The next month, I moved out. I didn't never advocate for myself, mind you. Once, when I was 22, I informed my mother that I didn't appreciate my sister's condescending speech. As if she didn't comprehend, she blinked. She's only kidding. She declared her love for you. At that time, I discovered that love in our family included never being able to express hurt. If you mention how you felt about someone, the issue is you. You're too delicate. You're creating a lot of drama. History is being rewritten by you. I thus ceased correcting them. I ceased requesting their presence, began creating a life apart from them, and gave up expecting anything more than the absolute minimum. However, a tiny, ashamed part of me still wanted them to be proud, even as I created something tangible, my own apartment, my own work, a completed novel. I sobbed when my agency called to let me know the book had sold. Not just because I had completed the task, but also because I believed that they may finally notice me now. I organized the party myself. I chose my parents' house as the location because I wanted it to seem intimate. Even the playlist and the food and beverages were my choices. I created the invites. I purchased the wine. I had the books with me, in the hopes that they would at last see the girl who used to scribble in the margins and have faith in her. I entered that house. Instead, they noticed something weaker and funny. They came across a journal. That night, I don't recall making the walk back to my car. My hands were still shaking as I sat in the cold, and my phone screen was blazing as if it knew something I didn't. Something inside of me broke. Something definitive. It wasn't anger, not quite. Rage was not as ancient as it was. Less noisy. Just like when you eventually quit rapping on a locked door. Every time I spoke the truth, they laughed. I didn't tell them anything this time. I just made a decision. I also didn't say anything, due to the truth. It's not always necessary to say things aloud. There are certain things that seem louder when you don't say them. They were slow to notice. The most fulfilling aspect was that they carried on as if nothing had occurred 4 days after the party. With the caption, "Proud of our little author," my sister shared a group photo on social media. As though she wanted to claim credit for the memory, my mother sent me a grainy photo of a piece of cake with the words "Congrats" written in red frosting. I was even texted once by my brother. "Tell me when you begin that second book, please. I have concepts." I spent a lot of time looking at that message. He still believed that I would allow him to participate. Something had already changed subtly, but he still believed this could be saved. Totally. This is what they were unaware of. My hands were still shaking as I sat on the porch that night, clutching my diary to my chest. I cut the ropes and took out my phone, each and every one. The mortgage has been paid off. Until the letter arrived, they wouldn't realize until the first payment bounced. Courteous but decisive. This account has been closed. Please get in touch with your provider if you need more help. My brother's scholarship was canceled by his tuition support. Only a portion of it. The rest of me in silence. Every month. He will be informed shortly. Access is locked for the midterm. Due balance. My sister's emergency fund for groceries, child care, and anything else she said she needed. Disabled. The standing order had been feeding her account like clockwork. She never said thank you. Probably thought it was my moral obligation. All of it. Lost. I also revoked my cosigner status from every account I could legally touch: the utilities, the family loan, the joint account I didn't ask to be added to in the first place. And I didn't just cancel payments, I sent one more thing that night. I emailed my lawyer, subject line, "Cease all informal family obligations." Effective immediately. It's funny how quickly people change when the money stops. My mom was the first to call. First, it was subtle. "Hey, honey, just wondering if there's been a delay on the usual transfer." "No big deal. Just checking." I didn't respond. Then came the second message. "We're short this month because your father had to cover the car repairs. Can you please just let me know when it's coming in?" Then the third. "I don't understand what's happening. We're under a lot of pressure right now." So I didn't reply. A week later, my brother called. "I got locked out of my student account. Did you forget to wait? Did you cancel it?" I didn't even bother to respond. Let them wonder. They had always depended on me, quietly, steadily. As if it were gravity. It started small years ago. A one-time payment to help with groceries. A little extra during the pandemic. A co-sign here, a cover there. But soon I was their safety net. The one they never saw, because they assumed I'd always be there, reliable, invisible, disposable. They lived like I didn't have bills. Like success meant I owed them. They never said thank you. Not once. Just, "Can you help us out again? Your sister's struggling. We're not asking for much." They always made it sound like a favor I was doing for myself. Like helping them meant I was part of the family. But the second I needed dignity, silence, or worse, laughter. It took 2 weeks for the panic to set in. I got a voicemail from my dad, computer controlled. "We must speak. This isn't sustainable. We've always worked as a unit. And I think you've forgotten that a unit." Funny how the only time they called us a unit was when the money was missing. The escalation came fast. After that, my sister showed up at my apartment. I didn't let her in. She stood outside the door for 20 minutes, yelling through it like we were on a bad reality show. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to just disappear, following everything that we have done for you." It nearly made me chuckle. Everything they'd done, I stayed quiet. She eventually left, but not before slipping a handwritten note under my door. "You're being selfish. You're letting the family fall apart." Then came the emails. My publisher forwarded the first one to me. An anonymous message, though I could tell it was my uncle, suggesting that I was mentally unstable and had a history of inappropriate obsessions. They didn't mention the diary, but they didn't need to. I knew exactly what they were doing, trying to poison the well, trying to ruin the one thing I'd built on my own. My publisher asked if I wanted to involve legal. I said yes. I called my lawyer again. This time the subject line was different: defamation, harassment, action. We submitted official stop and desist notices. My sister earned one for showing up to my home and refused to leave. My uncle received one for contacting my business connections, and the whole family got a combined notice indicating that any future meddling in my job, money, or personal life will be faced with rapid legal action. Suddenly, the communications ceased. The house went silent. I should have felt triumphant, but what I truly felt was liberated. Like I could finally hear my own thoughts again. Like I'd stopped auditioning for a part I never desired in the first place. The family's silent supporter. The fixer. The one who constantly helps out. No one had ever inquired what it cost me. Until I stopped coming up, no one had ever asked what I needed. Then they ran. However, it was too late. Last week, I walked by a bookshop and noticed my book in the window, in the forefront. The cover has a best-selling label. I stood there for a while without snapping a photo, refraining from texting anybody, simply breathing. Right now, nobody had their hands. Nobody could dismiss it with laughter. I stepped in, paid for a copy, and put it in my coat. The cover features my name. Every page has my words, and none of them were inside. They believed that I would always be present. They believed I owed them money. They now understand, however, that I was the one keeping things together. I then let go. After the initial blow is delivered, there's this moment. As soon as the shock subsides. It must be an error, your brain tells you. My family was like that. Following the cessation of payments, the issuance of legal notifications, and their realization that they couldn't use charm or guilt to get back in. A pause occurred. Even though I nearly thought it was finished, I ought to have been more aware, because when you take something away from someone you like, they don't back down. Only when you take what they feel they are entitled to do, they double down. Silently, the first indication appeared. I received a message from a journalist I had collaborated with, who said that someone had contacted her posing as a family friend and provided me with sensitive personal information. She just forwarded the email without considering it. The tone was that nebulous, self-righteous one. Only resentful family members appear to be flawless. Many things concerning her are unknown to readers. Her stability has been inconsistent. We're simply concerned. That was a lot of money. After that, I received screenshots from a member of the publisher's marketing staff. Twitter accounts that are anonymous. Same words, same tone. With the remark, "This is the real her." One of them shared a cropped picture from my adolescence. Don't fall for it. It was a harmless picture. It was just me as a child, sitting in my room with a pile of books. However, I was aware of their intentions. They were attempting to discredit me by using my background and the timid, sensitive girl they had been making fun of behind closed doors for years. Since they threatened to remove my name if they couldn't collect their money, they were now bringing her out into the open and attempting to convince everyone that she was unstable, dangerous, and deluded. I gave my lawyer another call. It was not a case of cease and desist this time. Who cared about the repercussions? We collected everything. Voice recordings, social media posts, emails, texts, and a few important witnesses who were in the sector and had received unwanted communications. I made sworn declarations. My attorney drafted a lawsuit alleging harassment and slander. A bit formal. Apparently, quiet limits didn't work, therefore it was loud. Before the documents were delivered, my sister arrived at my door once again. This time, she was weeping. Real tears, not crocodile tears, and hands that shook throughout the performance. "I had no idea," she replied. "I had no idea they had progressed this far." I listened while standing at the doorway. He told me she was afraid, that she missed me, and that he blamed others. Stated that she was shocked by how far things had gotten out of control. I answered, "You laughed the loudest." Looking her in the eye, she stopped. I didn't speak louder. I refrained from crying. I simply shut the door. 3 days later, the complaint was filed. It didn't need to, but it didn't make the news. My publisher was aware. My group was aware. The literary world was aware. The family began to fear behind the scenes. Attorneys contacted them. They exchanged letters. A settlement effort was made. I said no. Their money wasn't what I wanted. All I wanted was the quiet. And I understood. They sent formal apologies that sounded like they had been chiseled out of stone under duress, removed the emails, and retracted the post. More than that, though, they vanished from my life, my voicemail, and my inbox. I was unable to hear their voices for the first time. Nothing, no accusations, no guilt trips, no laughs. And it wasn't exactly calm either. But after a long storm, I still enjoy the air, sloppy, clean but damp. I'm frequently asked if I ever replied to the last apology. I didn't send anything back. People who view apologies as merely another tactic to manipulate me don't need to give me closure. I didn't require their comprehension. All I wanted was for them to stop, and they did. Last month, the second book came out. The pre-order is completely sold out. They weren't the focus. They had never seen parts of me before, but not exactly. Not the notebook-wielding girl. Not the actor. The bank account? No, only me. The girl who used to write. They probably wouldn't notice until dinner if I vanished. The girl who at last understood that they were never worthy of sitting at her table in the first place. The diary is still with me, the authentic one. They read it as if it were a joke. I've placed it next to the contract for my second book in a fireproof box. I occasionally pull it out and turn to the entry they made fun of the most. The crush one. The invisible one. The one that made them laugh. I'm not ashamed now that I've read it. The fact that that diary wasn't embarrassing gives me clarity, was evidence. Evidence that, long before I was prepared to take action, I recognized them for who they truly were. They attempted to use my own words to degrade me. In court, I used theirs instead of mine, even though they believed it would break me. On paper, and I never paid for their silence. They paid for mine. It's been over a year now. My parents lost the house. Turns out refinancing only takes you so far when no one has an actual income. They moved into a considerably smaller apartment, hardly a step above a rental, though they still believe it's transitory. My sister obtained a job at a call center. He dislikes it. She shares passive hostile quotes on Facebook now. Stuff about how families should remain together and money can't buy loyalty. Are kids doing okay? Thankfully, I send birthday gifts privately without a return address. My brother dropped out of university 2 semesters later. Apparently, when someone else isn't paying for your education, it's a little difficult to stay motivated. I haven't seen any of them since the lawsuit. Sometimes I worry if I went too far, if cutting them off totally was cold. Letting it all crumble was awful. But then I recall how effortlessly they laughed, how easily they decided to humiliate me when I had only ever given. Never stop hoping they'll be proud. Thus, I'm not sure. What are your thoughts? Have I gone too far? Tell me in the comments below. Your opinions would be much appreciated. Make sure to subscribe for more if you enjoy stories like this one, in which justice isn't always shown in a kind manner.